name is Risa Raud. I'm an AS Media Studies student in Margala campus, Beacon House. These are my media studies evaluation questions for the film opening project, The Limber. Firstly, I'll introduce you to my group members. This is me, Risa Raud. This is Zaina Riaz. This is Beroz Heather. And lastly, this is Malik Hashim Ali Awan. Moving on towards the first question, which is how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social group or issues? Firstly, when we talk about conventions, they are basically used to convey a desired impression, and also they're divided into two types, which are the technical and symbolic. Technical conventions include the techniques that we use, such as the camera angles, camera movements, camera shots, sound, and lighting. Whereas when you look at the symbolic conventions, there is symbol in the meaning of being represented by technical conventions. Also, if you look closely at conventions, there are also the stereotypes that are usually created in today's society. Looking at our product, The Limber, its social group is age, and also our main character is a teenage boy whose life is about to take a big turn when he receives a really mysterious mailer box. We try to show a young boy living in a very isolated house and alone. He wakes up at a very unusual time, which I'll show you here. Over here, he wakes up at the time of 2:18, which is very unusual for some adult to wake up at, which also represents that he doesn't have much work to do and also seems a bit lethargic and lazy. When there's a shot that he hears a doorbell, he seems really astonished, and which corroborates that he must have really less amount of visitors coming over very often. But when we look at our film following the conventions, the clothes of the character and the location and the lighting, looking at the camera work we have done and the sounds we have put in. If you look at our genre of our film, it is basically a psychological thriller and horror mix. It's the blend of these two. If you look at the following of the conventions of this genre, the lighting we tried to use was the natural sunlight to give it some shadowy effect. Also, the camera shots we had done were in a basement of our fellow members' house. Also, for the use of having the low-key lighting to give it a very gloomy and dark effect. We also made sure that we used such dramatic and slow music in the background, so we would have some tension building, and when the suspense keeps on unraveling, the suspense going on behind and in front, and what kind of scenario that young boy is living in. The music even starts to get really tense when there's something that happened. We try using really good sting sounds to also build the tension and to also show the turning points in the film, which were to be revealed soon. We also used a shot where there's a door slamming. We made sure to use a loud audio, so it would give a really sudden jump scare effect, and also it would alert the audience that something is about to take place which is not going to be really good. We had the next impression emphasized of the heavy breathing of the character, which also exaggerated the level of the tension and anxiety feeling when the character looks at his hand, which is full of blood. When we move towards the camera work, we tend to have like the handheld movements, which created a good tension feel. And also, we had very conventional tracking shots. We even kept the character's face hidden, so it would build the suspense in the beginning for the audience to see. If we talk about the editing pace of our film, it was really slow at the beginning, but gradually the shots were becoming shorter and the pace was taking a speed and increase. Looking at the film, we also gave it some desaturation so we could have like the dark effect how usually a horror film has, and also some blue tones were also used throughout our film. We tried to show some blood spilled on the floor, some droplets here and there, on the door, on the floor, on the doorknob, which is very conventional, and usually we often see them blood spillage in every kind of horror film or psychological thriller films. If we look at the titles we tried to introduce, they were relatively in a really normal manner. And as we witnessed, our character, who himself is a teenage boy, who wakes up at an odd time, he seems very tired because maybe he has a very dysfunctional routine since he's waking up late, and that is basically a really stereotypical way of how the media represents a teenager nowadays. Looking back at our question, it says, how does your product use or challenge the conventions? We tried our level best to challenge the conventions since we had a film title in a bold and black font, which is usually really unconventional if you think about it, since many of the horror and thriller films we see are in a very creepy font, really small and thin line fonts with some blood splitting, or sometimes it's all of it is colored in red, which usually tends to represent the danger and the fright to bring it up in audience who's looking at it. And moving on towards the title of our film, we added a glitch effect, which I'll show you right now. Over here, it was basically to show some errors and connotate that the film had some fault in the system. But when moving on towards our main character, looking at his state, he is basically a small, young, youthful boy who's living alone in a very isolated place and really feel like the house is totally empty if you look at the film. And usually in horror films, you mostly see that adults are being put in through these terrifying events, and because they can, I guess, bear the situations which are surrounding them. And since teenagers are not considered to go through this really traumatizing scenes and blood spillage, they're often by the media represented and shown that they're always dependent on their parents, which is totally wrong, which is not right, and we try to go against this convention. Moving on towards the next question, how does your product engage with the audience, and how would it be distributed as real media text? Looking at our film Limbo, it's basically targeting the youth since our genre is psychological thriller and horror mix, and usually younger audiences tend to get attracted to horror films and psychological thrillers because they can easily get excited to the suspense and the jump scares and the mysteries that are coming up and the horror audios that are coming up. But as you compare it to the older audience, they would rather not look at such disturbing stuff. We try to attract our audience not only by the mystery and the thrill we have in the film, but also sometimes some audience has a fear stepping into the horror system. But we tried our best to let them step into their fear bucket and try to build a connection with the video and as well as the teenager who is being shown in it. Moreover, the character being a teenager who himself is in isolation and is waking up at very odd times and very disturbed and dysfunctional, you can look that many introverted teenagers will also relate to themselves. Furthermore, if you look at the video, as I will show you right here, the character, tends to snooze the alarm, which is really usual for teenagers since it looks that he has not been having enough sleep and is really tired, and it typically means that he didn't have a good like a functional routine, so which younger generation nowadays can really easily relate to because we tend to have really late night chats and stuff which is not related to a good amount of sleep having. So moving on, if we see at the character in his attire, he is actually wearing a hoodie and pajamas, which is really usual for younger generation kids or the youth to wear when they're in their house in their own form of comfortable pajamas and hoodie. And when we say how does a product engage with the audience, we tend to make a product in such a way so the females and male could engage with it really easily. We also try to engage them by the mysterious, tensionful, like building music at the back, and which also has a really increasing, intensifying, and along the plot. Or overall, if we look at the video, we use the natural lighting, and we also make sure that the ambience of it is really, really gloomy and dark to create this really tenseful and frightness in the audience when they're looking at this film of ours. While we talk about the editing, we try to decrease the saturation level, also give it some blue tone since it symbolizes the aloofness which was present in the teenagers who are usually really isolated and reserved type. We try to involve our audience by giving them the picture of blood droplets, some mysterious mail package coming in, some intense music going along with all this scenario. We tend to leave our audience in curiousness at the end of the film to like create a sense of suspense and mystery and to for them that what was in that box and let them think for themselves and predict what the end of it would be. And looking at it when we tried to cast the character, which was our friend Najam Hasnan, after many thoughts and many meetings and many arguments, we thought that Najam is going to be the perfect fit since he was in our school's drama club and he basically has a really good experience in the dramatic field. And also, he himself is a teenager, like, and he also fits perfectly into the character's role that we want. At the end of the question, the second part, it says, how would it be distributed as real media text? What does it mean by that? We basically had to distribute it as a real media text, how the bigger films do. So we tried to upload a film opening on the YouTube and Instagram. Since our film opening was at a very low budget, and also we had to think that the distribution should also be according to our low budget. So we tried to put it on YouTube and Instagram and spread the word around a lot. It was really helpful because a lot of our friends and family members and many fellow media students also saw it. And also this shared and supported us, and they shared the film with others, which also made us easily target the other audience which we weren't being able to contact to. So we tried our best to use the power of social media platform to spread the word of our film opening, The Limbo. Moving on to the third question, which is how did your production skill develop through this project? Basically, if I tell you about this question, I already had some experience with a camera. I was really comfortable using some different kind of angles and camera shots and some settings. And I had already shot some small videos, so for my goodwill, at looking at the preliminary exercise, I also made an advertisement for the blog, which was really helpful before we even filmed our film opening. It gave us the courage to develop all of our production skills for the film. Looking at our media teacher, he taught us some camera angles, which were some mid shots, close ups, master and establishing shots such as the over shoulder shot. We also tend to learn from him some different kind of camera movements like the dolly in or out, the crane shot, the pan movement, the tracking shot, the tilt movement, which is also known as the Dutch tilt. So during our shooting, we tried to try our best to take many retakes. So until and unless it was to our liking, we had used many different kinds of types and kinds of camera movements and angles, so we could fully focus on our knowledge that we know, so we could put it in our best effort so we would create the best product for the audience we are revealing our product to. The thing is that our camera skills, the stability of holding a camera, the movement thinking had improved till the end we had done our project. It also, we intend to gain a lot of understanding about the lighting in the beginning. I was always really skeptical towards the importance of lighting. Why does it impact on genres and plots so much? But however, our teacher did a good thing. He made us learn it, and however, when we learned about the low key and high key lighting, we kind of went go along with the low key lighting since it also matched with our genre, which is the psychological thriller and horror. When you look at the editing we have done, we chose Adobe Premiere Pro. Before, I had been able to shoot some videos and edit them since I had also made some advertisement as well. So we also got the hang of it before we even choose to make the film. We also used some After Effects for the titles. We used that app as well. I really started off with the basics when I was using Adobe Premiere Pro. I started off by merging videos and have some cuts being done, bringing some transitions into my videos like dip to black and the white to dip. So gradually I got the hang of how to use this kind of editing software, and then we were good in thinking that we were able to go through the phase of the production and pre-production for the project we're about to do for the media studies exam. Looking at me and my team and I, we had really good group meetings. In the first go, we had made up some 10 mind map about 10 ideas of what the story plot can be. And if we look at our brains, we are somewhat we were thinking like of it because most of our ideas were leaning towards the thriller and horror phase. We also had an inspiration by looking at the previous media projects which were provided by our media sir. We also had an inspiration film from which It was from the 1995 Seven, whose plot is also based upon a mystery, which gave us the idea of mixing the mystery into our film. If we look at our original plan, in initial we had a really different idea than our present product right now. It was revolving around a girl who's getting kidnapped, and however, as we moved on, we mapped out more of our ideas. We revamped all of our original story. We also created a really good storyboard, which like really helped us to visualize what we're about to make. Will it make sense? Will the whole concept make sense before we shoot it? And along we made a rough script along the short list so we could ensure that we are timing it perfectly into the 2 minutes span time we have. We considered a lot of people actually, like many people, but chose Najamul Hussain as our character since he already had an experience in a drama field. Plus, we were looking for someone who knew how to act without dialogues, who knows how to the facial expressions, the body language, and etc. After being done with finalizing the character, we had to look down for locations, and we had listed down many locations. We originally had to shoot at my family's farmhouse, but since we had a lot of problems and having inconvenience in between for the crew, we decided to film at the other member's house, which was Hashim Ali Awan's. And it was also really near to us, so our members could easily reach out. If you look at the title, The Limbo We Produce, it basically means to be in a forgotten place, which also goes really good along with the story plot, which revolves around the teenager who's living like in a really isolated, alone, and empty house, separate from the rest of the neighborhood, the world, or the society he's living in. We used tensed background to give it a bit of a more creepy feeling. So as I've said it before too, the editing of the film was slow-paced in the beginning but picked up the pace along the plot as soon as we started to take the shots and try to perfectly fit it into the video and also see if the video could get shortened and fit perfectly and have a good shot. Moving on towards my last question, which is how did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online in this product? So if we look at what is production, it's basically a media text that requires the use of the technology such as the software, hardware, or the online material we have. And we tried our level best so that we use the three of the technologies. Looking at the day of our shooting our film product, we had in use the three cameras. One was Canon 700D, the other was Nikon 5200D, and the third was Nikon 3400D. We had two lenses, which was 1800 to 55 millimeters, and the second was 70 to 300 millimeters. We used two tripods. When we started to have we had all the camera work done and had into a USB, we used only one laptop for the editing, the product, and had a separate USB so we could transfer the files into that USB for our backup, even if something bad happens to the laptop we were using. Since we had three cameras, sorry, it's written two, we made sure that the camera settings are similar to one another, since if the camera was not in the similar setting, it would have seemed really weird because we would have to do a lot of work to make it look similar. So, and the most important thing was we had our cell phones with us, so we could stay in contact with each other to at what time do we reach and what time we do what. When talking about online material, we use an online software such as the WhatsApp to plan our shoots and our meetings. We also carried out some of the group meetings on Zoom, which was really convenient for us. And when we were done with the product completion, we also uploaded our project on Instagram and YouTube to reveal the film project we had done together to the friends and family members we know, so we could get the feedback that how we did on our work. And when you're looking at the editing, we did the entire project on Adobe After Effects Professional as well as Adobe Premiere Pro. Throughout the film opening, we had many normal cuts, like many. And we also used to add the verisimilitude. Looking at the trackers were used in After Effects for the titles, and the glitch effect was used for the film title. We have the limbo. Wrap stabilizer effects was also used when we had some tracking shots to give it some stable look. There were some transitions from, we used a transition dip to black, and when we looked at the smooth scale, it was to give us the fake dolly effect that we tried to put into the last shot, which I'll show you right now, which is basically when he has this, when he tries to open the box and then he lurks and the camera just slowly dolly ends, and it was to give a fake dolly effect. It was not done by us. And also we did our color grading of the clips in Adobe After Effects Professional as well as the Adobe Premiere Pro. When we look at the title, a simple text was needed because the look of the bold font we used and the added glitch effect was to add the suspense and mystery to the title, since the effect was really good and we had also picked it from the After Effects. Looking at the last thing about our project, we tried to take sound effects which were really important for us for the film to make it look realistic and to make it sound like a mysterious or horror film. We basically the sound effects were respectively taken from YouTube. They were non-copyright soundtracks, which were also taken from YouTube. And if we look at it, YouTube is a really useful thing in the pre-production period for us, as when we were planning out for our film, we looked up for many AS Media students A grade film openings, and that gave us a good inspiration to take from the students' work as well as the professional producers that our sir gave links to it, so we could get inspired and to give our level best to make this product into a best product we could serve. And here is the end of my evaluation questions.